Welcome to the Women Leaders Association Daily Member Podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland. And in each Daily Member Podcast, we will pick out a great speaker from one of our meetings that we thought you would enjoy. You can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or find a networking group near you, or if you just need access to the membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Now let's tune in for this incredible message.
Well, it is my pleasure today to join you to be able to discuss and share with you a really important topic that's near and dear to my heart. And this is all around mentoring and sponsorship of women in the workplace. And it's my pleasure to kick off the discussion today with this topic because there's going to be a lot of really interesting speakers on how to have difficult conversations and ways to accelerate your career. And I feel that the topic of mentoring and sponsorship, while it's one that tends to come up as in top of mind, we don't often dive deep into what does it really mean to be a mentor or to be a sponsor or to be a mentee or a sponsee and how does this help us really accelerate our career. So I'm going to spend a few minutes sharing my perspective on the topic of beyond mentoring, but really the critical need to sponsor women in the workplace today. Now let's see if I can be, there we go. So before I start, a little bit about Schneider Electric, the company that I'm currently with and that I'm representing today, and then also a little bit about me. So for those of you who don't know, Schneider Electric is a multinational company, and we provide energy and automation solutions for a variety of different industries. And our purpose is really to empower all to make the most of our energy and our resources, bridging progress and sustainability. So I'm not here to talk to you today about what we do, but I am here to share with you how we do approach the topic of mentorships and sponsorships within the organization. And also I'm going to share with you my personal perspective as well. So maybe then just a little bit about me. So I am currently leading global brand and communications for Schneider Electric. I have about 23 years of experience in B2B marketing with a variety of different industries, but really only a few companies. So I started my career with General Electric, and I spent 15 years with GE in a variety of different segments and different business units. And I came to Schneider about 3 years ago, and I've led all different functions of marketing and communications, and now the brand function as well for the company. I also spent a little bit of time at ABB through an acquisition when I was with GE, which has a very interesting part of my career, being able to go through the acquisition. I was always on the buy side, so this was more of what it felt like to be sold through an acquisition to another competitor. And I got my education at Northeastern University. I'm originally from San Francisco, but I currently reside in the northern part of the U.S. I'm in Connecticut. And just a little bit about me from skills and values and competencies, but I won't read through that because I really want to get into the bulk and the meat of the conversation today. But I thought it would be helpful to give you a little context of my background. I also want to share that, while I was at GE is when we started the Women's Network, which has been a theme that's carried out through my career, whether it was I was at ABB, we had a similar type of network, and now it's Schneider Electric as well. It's called WISE, the Women in Schneider Electric. And so we often talk about the notion of mentorships and sponsorships. And you'll hear people talk about this in a lot of different ways. It's often described as programs that are established through organizations, or sometimes it's inorganic. So it's more around just the natural development of how relationships come to be, whether that's a mentorship or a sponsorship. And you're probably asking yourself, why do I keep making this distinction between a mentorship or a sponsorship? And the reality is there's actually quite a big difference, but I find that the words are often used interchangeably. But it's very important to make that distinction and have the definition between the two, because they both serve very specific needs, and they're both very important in the development of people, full stop, not just women, but just people in general. So I'd like to start the discussion around the difference between sponsorships and mentorships. And this is just a very kind of a snapshot to encapsulate this for you all. So mentoring, when you really kind of boil down the definition, is around supporting and encouraging people to manage their own career, to help them become who they want to be. So it's very much a supportive role. Sometimes the word coaching is used. Coaching is actually a slightly different vein of mentoring, but mentoring is really about supporting and encouraging people to be their best selves. Different than sponsorships. So sponsoring is around advocating or vouching for another individual because you have evidence, because you have seen how they perform, you've witnessed their experience, you've witnessed their performance, and you have almost a personal commitment, or you're vested in that person's advancement. Now, as you can see, these are two very, very different definitions. And this is why when we use them interchangeably, it's not really doing the two roles justice. Mentoring is something that can be established through a program. You can set up mentoring programs. You can pair people up and ask someone to be a mentor to somebody that they don't know. Oftentimes it's helpful, but it's not a requirement, because you can get to know the person through the mentorship, and you can support and encourage people throughout their career journey without actually having worked with them. Very much of, again, kind of that coaching, or that almost like a teacher perspective. But sponsoring can really only be done if you have seen that person in action, you know them, you can vouch for them, you can advocate for them. And that's why when people talk about having sponsors, this is not something that you really can sign up for. It's not, having a sponsorship program is a lot more difficult, because the pairing of the individuals have to be with people who have worked together, and the sponsor needs to be somebody who can really vouch and advocate for that person. So I think it's important to define the two, especially in the context of, why do we need sponsors within our career? And I actually argue that you need both, but you can see here that there's two very different roles between having a sponsor and having a mentor. Now, because mentoring, I feel, is equally as important as sponsorship, I think it's also nice just to talk about all the different types of mentoring that's out there. Oftentimes, we talk about the first one that's there, the mentor and the mentee type of sponsorship. It's generally, there's a one-to-one relationship. You get paired up. You're often looking for somebody who is in your same line of work. You perhaps work in the same company, or at least in the same industry, or in the same function. And so very much there's this mentor to mentee, a one-to-one match. Flash mentoring, often kind of joked as the speed dating of mentoring. Sometimes you get this when you go to different leadership conferences, and you'll be able to pair up with people quickly, and you maybe bring one or two topics to the table, and you kind of do these flash mentoring sessions. Very dynamic, and it's more of like a networking opportunity. Now, group mentorships and mentoring circles are often thought to be the same thing, but group mentorships are very interesting, and they can actually be very fruitful and very rewarding. It's when a collection of people come together and they mentor each other. So it's like a self-mentoring group or organization. So there isn't a lead mentor, but the group itself kind of self-governs a mentoring model, and everyone learns from each other. Very similar to peer mentoring. Peer mentoring is often more of a one-to-one as well, but as opposed to someone being more senior, they're just more at the same level in their career journey. But mentoring circles is something that's very different, and it's something that companies are starting to do more and more, where you have a leader and this person mentors one or two different groups of individuals. So they're different circles, and they somewhat intersect at certain points through the program, but there is still that lead mentor that's working with a group of mentees. So it's not the group mentorship. There's still kind of that one lead mentor with a variety of people in the group. And then there's my favorite, which is the reverse mentoring. And it's one that I think is really important that a lot of us don't do often, myself included. And this is, how do I reach into the organization for early career talents, people who are newer to maybe the workforce or newer to a particular industry, and you have that reverse mentoring because sometimes, as we all know, as you get more senior in the organization, it can be a little bit harder to stay relevant or to stay current. And so reverse mentoring can be a really interesting one to employ in your organization as well. So lots of different types of mentoring. Now, if I go on to, and I think I'm going to have a little glitch here. Why do you really need both? So you need both because they serve different purposes. So when you think about, if I go back to the definitions of mentors and sponsors, mentors are there to develop, whereas sponsors are really here to help drive. They're here, they have proteges, right? So sponsors have proteges, mentors have mentees, but the sponsors have the proteges, and they're really helping people to drive their career vision. We talked about this. The mentors are more around supporting through discussions, through how to help them expand their network, but sponsors promote. And hopefully now you're getting kind of a sense of one is more of a supporting role where that sponsorship is really there to help promote, to help advocate, to help influence. And the sponsors also really leverage their own networks to help the proteges, to help the people that they are working with, to connect them to other high profile assignments or to other people in the organization that you wouldn't normally have access to. So that's a real key differentiator, is being able to open doors. The mentors are there to definitely encourage advancement, and there's tips and tricks, and you try to have, what are those unwritten rules that you want your mentees to know? But sponsors are enabling the advancement. So it's not just encouraging, but it's really, really enabling it. And while mentors offer insight, sponsors are really that champion for that visibility. So you do need both. I often get the question around, is there a certain point in one's career where you pivot, or is there like a fulcrum or an inflection point where you move from needing a mentor to needing a sponsor? And I think it's an interesting question, and it's a very good question. And the answer is it depends. But often, yes. When you are on the precipice of a promotion, when you're going to be moving up from maybe not leading a team to having a leadership role, or perhaps it's a smaller team and now it's going to be leading a function, this is where sponsors really come into play, because they can vouch for your previous work, they can advocate for what you can do, and they're really kind of that high-powered referral. And oftentimes it's an internal referral that will help you leap to that next level. And so that's why there are different points in people's careers where you transition from the need from a mentor to a sponsor, and then you transition back too. And mentors you can have throughout the entire, your entire career at different points of your journey. But sometimes you lean on a sponsor more than you would lean on a mentor. Now, often, these are very anecdotal. This is kind of personal experience, but the proof is also in the numbers. And there was a couple studies that were done not that long ago, one by Forbes and one by PayScale, that mentees are on average promoted about 5 times more than those without mentors. So you can see there the real benefit of having that mentor to help coach you and to help push you to visualize and to realize the journey that you're on. But then also those who have sponsored on average are paid about 12% more than those who are not. And so these are some, I like to also layer in some more hard measurements around why it's so important to have both mentors and sponsorships for all of us, regardless of where you are in your journey. Now, one question I also often get is around, well, how do you get a sponsor? So even though we go through the definition of a mentee or a mentor and a sponsor, oftentimes we'll get the question, well, how do I get a sponsor? And sponsors are earned. And I even have folks who will come up to me and they'll say, well, would you sponsor me for something? And if it's somebody that I've worked with, that I can advocate for, that I've seen their performance, I feel like I can put my own reputation on the line, that is when you know that you have become the sponsor for somebody. If that's not there, and the relationship either hasn't developed to that point, or it's not really a person that you would vouch for their own performance, I often say to people, look, I'm happy to be a mentor for you. And I'm happy to coach you and encourage you and help you realize your biggest potential and your best performance possible. But I can't be a sponsor yet because we either haven't worked together, or I can't advocate. So that's why when companies, and I've been involved with different women's networks and leadership networks throughout the years, when they'll come and they say, we want to put a sponsorship program in place, you actually have to kind of take a step back and say, well, do you really want to put a sponsorship program in place, or do you want to put a mentorship program on the ground? And do you want to teach people how to be sponsors and encourage people to find sponsors with those that they've worked with? So a nuance, but I think one that's really, really important. And then maybe, because I do want to leave time for some questions, just some reflections on the topic. I do really feel that you need both mentors and sponsors. I've had some fantastic ones throughout my career, and I'm also very active today in mentoring people and also sponsoring people. And maybe during the Q&A, I can share too kind of what the right level is, because sometimes it can become a little bit overwhelming. But also mentors are there. This is an important distinction that I share with folks who are interested in the topic. Mentors are here to talk with you, where sponsors talk about you. And I really like that, because this helps also kind of clarify the different roles of having a mentor or a sponsor in your career. So mentors are there to talk with you, to go through problems. Maybe you're bringing challenges to the table and you need some guidance. Whereas your sponsors, what you want them to do, or what you should be doing as a sponsor, is you should be talking about those that you want to promote. And your sponsors should be talking about you in order to set you up for that next promotion or for that next challenge that you're looking for, or highlighting the great work that you've done. So you talk with mentors, but sponsors should be there to talk about you. I also feel very passionately and strongly that this takes time. And you have to invest in these relationships, whether it's a mentor relationship that you have or a sponsor relationship that you're building and cultivating. But it does take time. And you also have to be incredibly honest and very, very open during these discussions. I'm happy to share with this group. I have a coach that I work with. No matter how far in one's career, I find it to be incredibly fulfilling. But I have to be very honest with him and very open to the feedback that he gives me as we go through the discussion. So I would put him into the category of a mentor, because he is talking with me. He's not a sponsor. He can't talk about me. We don't work together in the same organization. So we're definitely, this is more in the mentor camp. But the transparency and the openness and the honesty that I have to have with him is very, very important. Now, oftentimes I also get the question, since I'm referencing the fact that my mentor today is a man, is, are these relationships or are these programs better suited in the context of women leadership to have it be, a woman to woman mentee, mentor, or sponsorship dynamic? And I actually, look, my take on this is whatever works best. Whatever works best for the individual. The nature of the industry that I've been in for the last 23 years, with the energy industry and even financial services, was a little more male dominated. So my sponsors today, I would say of the 4 or 5 that I would say I have really, really tight sponsors that I've developed over the last 20 years, 4 of those 5 are men, just by the nature of who I worked with for the last 20 years in my career. I also think that having sponsorship or mentorship programs, I should say, that are focused more on women development and leadership development is really important. And I do that today. I do that today as well. So I think it depends on the dynamics of the organization and the individuals that are participating in the program. Sometimes it is just easier that women are experiencing different types of leadership challenges than maybe some of their male counterparts. And sometimes those relationships can be very rewarding, But the bottom line is that you need to invest time, and you also need to be very honest and open.
Hey, my friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and share your biggest takeaway. And if you're wanting more, you can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. You can also get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or a networking group near you. Or if you just need to access your membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Because here at Women Leaders Association, we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. That's all for today, my friends. Bye for now.